Sure. So our topic of the week is what we would call impressive Excel, and what we want to talk about is, first of all, things that impressed us at the most recently at the past Business Analytics Conference, but also over the years, with our guests from an evolutionary standpoint. What are things that we've seen that have impressed us? What have clients done that have impressed us? What things have we conquered with Excel that we didn't think was possible? Um, so yeah, I'll just give it to the floor. Anyone want to jump in and give their thoughts?
So I'll
How about you, Oz? What do you think? Oh,
no,
sorry.
no.
How about you, Rick?
Yeah, I'll start off just kind of being in the BI space and seeing how things have evolved over time. It's gone from you're either in Excel or you're in a reporting tool. You're in Crystal Reports or something like that. And something I've seen kind of evolve over the last several years is many of the major kind of ERP providers or system providers creating add-ins to Excel or add-ins to Office, right, to where you can connect directly to SAP, connect directly to Oracle, or any of your systems you're using to run your business, and connect directly to those with Excel, and use almost like a pivot table for the most part, bringing your data in, just sliding it over. The fact that I think that a lot of major BI players are starting to see Excel not necessarily as competition, but as a ad hoc tool. And if they can kind of get their hands around that market and those people who are using that tool already, they're more likely to have their business intelligence tools. People are more likely to use them because they're in a tool they're already comfortable with. So that's something that's really evolved for me that I've seen even in the business intelligence space, quite a bit.
Yeah. One thing I think about is one of my first real serious projects as a freelancer was a client, Sarah. She was moving like 400 phone systems. These offices, these kiosks and things, they were moving their phone systems. And they just had to get on with the get on, and start moving that stuff. And there was no time to start thinking about a database and whatnot. And so there was like 400 rows of data and about 200 columns. And yeah, we just had to ride that bull. And sure, you could make an argument for it should have been in a database, there should have been this and that, but they had to get moving. And so I was brought in to make a dashboard and help clean at night, when she would pass me the spreadsheet at about 10 p.m. and I had to have it back to her by 10 a.m. Deal with any enhancements she's wanted, any changes to the dashboard, any broken formulas. That was a great project, one of my favorite clients. And that one interesting thing, as a freelancer, when I jumped in there, they were on Excel 2007. And there was some cool things that would have been available had they been in 2010, but I had to realize they don't have much space, so I've just got to deal with what they've got so we can keep moving and meet this. They had like a mid-November deadline. That was a really exciting project, and yeah, and they moved all those 400 phone systems.
Cool. Cool. Well, I think what's really impressing me now is the Power BI stuff, and I know we always talk about that and how quickly it can analyze data, but I just want to make this point. So if our viewers ever go to archive.org, they can actually see older programs. So I'm going to share my screen real quick because they have the original, I think it's the original, Daniel can tell me if it's the original, but they do have VisiCalc here at archive.org, and you see it opens with, do you want to use 80 columns? So I'm not really sure what the lore is behind that, about the 80 columns. Did it open? Could you choose to do more? Or, but as you can see, it's grown significantly since since the early days.
Yeah, I can't even remember the size limits in the original VisiCalc. They were pretty small. The whole screen see, we didn't have an 80-column screen at first. We had a 40-column screen, 40 by 25, and it was a great pleasure when we were able to expand to 80 by 25. I know Oz was talking about it being Excel 2007, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this, but to me, you know, in Excel 2010 and Excel 2013, the availability of Power Pivot, I think, was almost like a new era for Excel. You know, it really gave you the immense power to deal with, you know, 10 million or even 100 million rows in the spreadsheet data model. And then with Power Pivot and now Power Query and Power View, that really has, it's meant a lot actually for analytics applications, because we would compete against, you know, software from like SAS and IBM and others where, you know, the message was, well, Excel is nice for smaller problems, but what about big problems? You know, then now you need our software. You know, you need to move outside of a spreadsheet. And really, with Power Pivot and Power Query, you can solve models that are extremely large, driven by extremely large amounts of data in Excel. It really is a fully competitive stack to what you can get from other vendors. There are a couple applications. You were kind of asking what has been most impressive to me, and I can think of two. One is a business user who built a model. This is using our more powerful solvers for Excel, but it had, so in standard Excel, you can solve models up to just 200 decision variables. So we have a user who built a model in Excel that people felt couldn't be built, and it had, so where the standard solver would be limited to 200 decision variables, this person had a model with 2.4 million decision variables, all done in Excel, and I forget exactly how many constraints, but you know, that kind of problem could be solved, you know, and it's the kind of problem you would find in far more expensive software that might cost you 20 times as much. The other, on a completely different axis, the kind of problem that that has impressed me is the kinds of problems people have solved, and they've been all over the map. I mean, one person had a solver model that was for a like a Formula race car, and it was a model of the acceleration for the engine and when you should shift and all that sort of thing. But one of my favorites was a model from somebody at the FDA actually, and they were figuring out how to optimally allocate funds for AIDS research across different projects and regions and so on using Excel.
Wow.
So, you know, a lot of good has been done.
Yes, a lot of good. And it's possible because people are empowered.
That's very true.
What sort of things did you see, Jordan?
You know, there's just so it's really the Power BI stuff that's impressed me lately. I would say the big jump for me in my career, that really made a big difference because I was working at the Air Force Audit Agency at that point, and all their macros were written in 2003, and they had upgraded 2007. The like toolbar didn't look very good. So I went in and I like redid the ribbon, and I actually like made my own designs, and I created this toolbar, and it wasn't even that hard to do it. And this really like was a career changer for me. I created this toolbar and I started making kind of custom things for people, and I collected them into this toolbar, and then it started spreading around the agency, and suddenly I had folks calling me from across the country and across the world asking like how to use it and how I did it. And by the time I left, it was the standard toolbar across the agency. It was like 800 some people were using it. So that was the biggest change. And I don't think I could have done that with 2003. I know that sounds weird to say, but 2007 was new enough, and I was interested enough in it that it like really created this great moment for the work I was doing. You know, because before that, I really didn't care about Excel. I know that sounds weird, but I had done Excel courses in like high school, and you know, it just was like, I mean, I was all right at it, but we didn't really learn it well enough. And I guess the thing later was using Solver Excel, which when I worked at the Air Force Institute of Technology, that kind of changed I didn't know that such hard problems. First, I didn't know that they really existed because I didn't have an operations research background at that point. But I didn't even know that they could be solved like that. So that was learning how to use Solver, and that was. And I'm not just saying that because you're on, but that was kind of a game changer for a lot of the projects, because at the time people at AFIT were saying, that's the Air Force Institute of Technology, they were saying we need to use C# for this, or we need to use Java, or we need to use C++. And that's a problem for the Air Force, because then you make an application, the application has to be approved. So we liked making things in Excel and being able to do these complex linear optimizations in Excel, doing scheduling problems. I don't know. There's tons of problems you could do. Sky's the limit. So doing all these in Excel was really a game changer for my career, and also showing what we could do for the Air Force. So, yeah.
But see,
those are the things that impressed me.
So I'm curious what Dan would have to say about this, because big data is starting to bore me, because I keep coming across people who don't have their normal data straightened out. And that, I think, is where our lives are really impacted, where the nonprofit that can't apply for grants, the retail establishment that can't get their scheduling right, whatever, a lot of just regular stuff. We aren't talking about the hospital that takes days to download billions of rows of data. And I've been more concerned about data literacy and having people think about, okay, so you are the grant writer, you are the shift manager at this small hotel. How can you get more out of Excel? How can you think more about data so things don't keep turning sideways on you?
Well, I think starting with the fundamentals is always, probably the right thing for people. It's really true that, there's a great deal of hype about big data now, and actually Frontline is working in the big data domain right now, but an awful lot of companies actually have large data that's not really big data. So what, definition of terms, to me, big data means data that is so voluminous that you really can't hold it on one computer, even one powerful computer, or one database, even an Oracle or DB2 or SQL Server large database, even Amazon Redshift. And so most of the technology around big data is centered around distributing that data, just storing it on like a cluster of 100 or 200 or even 1,000 machines, and then the software tools that will enable you to do something with that data, by executing operations across the cluster at once. Well, I think most even large companies, with the exception of just the biggest companies on earth, their financial data is not big data.
Right.
It'll fit in a database.
Yes.
Maybe everything that happens in terms of, hits on their website, or the Twitter feed across the industries that they care about, or that sort of thing, or video or GPS feeds of people walking in front of their retail stores, that sort of thing would be big data. And so there's hype, there's substance behind the hype for
Yes.
certain kinds of applications, and we actually plan to bring big data into Excel.
Okay.
And make it possible to do interesting things with sampling and summarization from a cluster in Excel. But for most people, Power Pivot and Power Query will do what you need. And you can pull that data. Typically, you're going to build, certainly we see analytic models being built from data that often shows up in pivot tables, because it's summarized data that came from the detailed data that you might have in your SQL Server database or in your spreadsheet data model. And there's just all kinds of not yet tapped opportunities there. So thinking about data, I'd almost just want to encourage people. So we have a product called Excel Miner. You could try that, or you could try something else. But play with data. That's really the thing to do. Like, start out by looking at it. And that's where data visualization comes in. I think most people feel now that's a really important trend right now. Whether you use Excel charts, whether you use Power BI, beautiful tool for that, whether you use Tableau or ClickView or something, start by looking at your data. You get a lot of insights that way.
Yes.
And then that's a guide to applying like data mining methods where you can get a lot more machine learning methods.
Play with it. Play with it. Don't be scared of your data.
Right.
Yes.
Whatever you do, make sure Rick Grantham always plays with data.